Welcome to Ideas with RoseAnn Janzen. This is the program where we go off the beaten track and talk about unusual things in the sort of spiritual realm, but really about anything. And today I'm talking with Cindia Carrere. She is the co-creator of the Living Vision Board, and she is so unique. She's a unique thinker, and she has very interesting ways of looking at things, and she's delighted me for years with little snippets and bits about all kinds of things. And so I'm really excited to bring her to you, and in a setting where we can go a little deeper on some of this stuff. So today we'll be talking about the way humanity is moving through the chakras in general, like we're all together, right? And so this is an area that is really, really interesting to me. But first, I want to get Cindia to tell you about her Living Vision Board. And I promise you this ties in. Cindia.
Well, RoseAnn, thank you so much for having me. And you know, you just mentioned that I've delighted you for years, but I always appreciate your take on things, and that in your company, to me, you've always said the sky's the limit. Like, you and I get to talk about just about anything. And when you and I have conversations, I don't feel like, oh, did that go too far? So I just want to thank you for allowing a very fresh, aired out space that we can just look at stuff, just to see, you know, turn it in different angles. And I just really appreciate that about you.
Oh, thank you, Cindia. That's my whole thing. Like, I love that, to be able to do that, and that we have the freedom to do that now.
Yes. So just a little bit about the Living Vision Board is, if you've ever seen me before, I can't hardly be in a conversation and not say it, but I do not hide this forehead, right? This is so much real estate. And I laugh and say, I can't have this much real estate on my forehead without being practical. So yes, I love energy. I love the ethereal and ideas, but because we're in human form, I'm also equally fascinated with how we pull the invisible or light into form and enjoy it with our senses. So if we can't see it, smell it, taste it, feel it, perceive it in this human form, what's the point? Because then we could all just go back to spirit and be in the big cosmic soup, right? So I feel that being human is constrained creativity, or creativity by constraint. So we have all these interesting rules that we have to play by, and because of that, we get very, very creative. So I love ideas, dreams, goals, and being able to hear them and bring them from the concept, the conceptual, into reality. And I love doing that myself. I love playing in the manifesting realm, and I kind of think of this world as my playground and being able to play with light into form. And I also have a passion to help other modern Renaissance women who are multi-passionate be able to have their ideas and bring them into form and see them come into fruition, so that they and we can enjoy them with our senses and help change the world.
Boy, there's so many things you said there that I absolutely love. Creativity by constraint. I've never heard that before. That is such an on-point way of describing us, but also that we are multi-passionate, right? We have spent so many years becoming specialized, and Buckminster Fuller actually warned against doing that. He warned that we should be expanding and embracing the whole, not specific little things. And in my own life, I like being a Renaissance woman, right? Learning all different parts in depth and bringing things together so that we can create new solutions to really old problems. And that's also where, and I know you are well read in a wide variety of areas also. And this is how we bring together new ideas, right? We don't constrain ourselves.
So when you were talking about, when we mentioned creativity by constraint, is that I always like to use the game of basketball, actually. So we have basketball, and there are such specific rules, right? The court is very precise by how wide and how long it is. The basketball hoops are at a certain level. The ball can only be bounced or dribbled or without dribbling. There's so many rules in basketball, because if the basket were, say, eye level or below, it wouldn't be that challenging, right? But there's specific how many players can be on the team. Well, because there are so many rules, then the basketball players who practice become outstanding. And so it is with anything like oil painting or playing the piano or anything. There are rules, but because people become so good at interacting with the constraints of that particular game or that particular instrument, that then they become really good at it.
And I would add too that that's when real creativity happens.
Yes.
Because once you reach that level of mastery, then
Exactly.
it's like explodes and new things develop, but still within those constraints.
So that's about the living vision board too. It's becoming masterful, having mastery over your own dreams, your desires, taking charge of your destiny, and creating a relationship with that skill from conception to reality.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's jump in on humanity moving through the chakras. Excuse me. Where do you think we are now? Oh.
Well, it really depends on what topic, because every topic that you have, every subject has its own evolution. It has even the etymology of a word has its beginning, and how a single word evolves over time. And you can take a human being. There are people who say, oh, it's just strictly evolution, and other people who say it's creationism. I don't see how they are opposed. I see the human form as a zygote from a sperm and an egg that multiplied. If you took a snapshot of us in the womb, little itty bitty, we have definitely evolved over time to where we're living outside the womb. I was a first grader, and now I'm an adult. So I have my own evolution physically, as you do, and as every other person does. But we also have the evolution of the entire world through geology. We have it through energy, and we have it through the ages. So I'm seeing us as a whole coming through the various ages. There's 7 that I'm listing right now, and we're heading towards the conceptual age. And that has to do with the crown chakra. And so I love this quote, if you don't mind, by Daniel Pink. He's the author of A Whole New Mind, Why Right Brainers Will Rule the Future. He says, the future belongs to a different kind of person with a different kind of mind. Artists, inventors, storytellers, creative and holistic right brain thinkers whose abilities mark the fault line between those who get ahead and those who don't. And we are heading, and so doesn't that sound like modern Renaissance right there with all that? So do you want just like a brief history of how I see that we were going through the chakras through the ages?
Yes, I do. But first,
Okay.
I want to inject something. I'm talking about creativity in the right brain. And, I've been reading much lately about how corporations are valuing, where before we valued workers, right? Now we're valuing people for their creativity. And homeschooling also has promoted that as increased creativity rather than the regular school system. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. Okay.
Well, there's a lot of homeschooling going on right now.
Yeah, right now. I wonder why. Maybe it has something to do with this. Okay.
Okay, so how I see it is that the first chakra was the hunting and gathering age from the very beginning, when people roamed, and it was pure survival, right? Mm-hmm. There was no luxury. There was not a lot of comfort. It was first chakra, survival, hunting and gathering. And then As time went on, it shifted partly for the agricultural age. People, some people, populations stopped roaming, and they took plots of land and they started growing things. So as a culture, people became farmers, and it was really the agricultural age, and landowners were king basically at that time. And then in the 1700s, it's called the Age of Enlightenment. And that ushered in an intellectual and philosophical movement that dominated the world of ideas, including science, music, and artistic freedom. So, you know, a lot of the major composers, right, they came up at a particular time in this Age of Enlightenment. Yeah. And a lot of science discoveries and exploration of the world. So that was the Age of Enlightenment. And then you just mentioned the workers. That was in the industrial age in the 1800s. So we've gone from the first chakra of hunting and gathering, the second chakra for the agricultural age, the sacral chakra, the power chakra, the Age of Enlightenment, right? And then we went up to the heart chakra, the fourth chakra, for the industrial age. And that's where, for good or bad, machinery came in, and the workers were the ones that were more in charge because there were so many factories. I mean, they weren't exactly in charge, there were bosses, but they had, the workers were the ones that had the power. Mm-hmm. More in collective. That's when unions started happening and representative, people's rights started to become more present, and that was through the heart chakra. And then in the 1900s was the technological age. So television, radio, all forms of communication. So that was the fifth chakra. So there was a lot, instead of individuals, there was a burst of technology. And then in the sixth chakra, we moved in the 2000 to the digital age. And we didn't need cords for anything. I mean, it was uploaded to the cloud and cordless everything, right? So we were plugged in the technological age. It was advanced, but everything had to be plugged in and grounded and everything. And then in the digital age, everything's like a camera doesn't even need film anymore. So that was up here. And now we will be moving into the conceptual age, where that's the crown chakra, and that's the connection to the divine and the right side of the brain. So the left side of the brain is equally important while we're in human form, but that takes care of dates and time and who we are and our ego and our individuation. And the right brain is all about the connection to all that is. And that's where I see we're going. But I mean, we could talk about what's going on with COVID or the whole racial tension. I mean, all of that has to do with the universal energies putting humanity through the chakras.
Right. Okay, before we go there, I want to look at the timeline too, because it seems to me that as you were talking about those, the time to go through each one has gotten shorter.
Exactly. It's like if you stack them on top.
Yeah.
Like for most of the history, it was in the hunting and gathering.
Yeah.
It was like for centuries. And then agricultural farmers, right? And then all the renaissance of the music and composing and art and science, right? That took a lot less time. And then whoop, technological in the 1900s, digital, 2000. I mean, you're exactly right. Thank you for catching that.
And as you're talking, like a pyramid, right? The triangle, the tetrahedron. Yep. In my studies, in my physics studies, that's really the base of source. That's how we're constructed. And so I find that's really delightful.
That's fun and juicy.
I know, right? Okay, carry on. I totally lost it with
well, that's okay. Like right now, so much attention is being placed on the heart and chest area. right? With COVID, and this is going to date it. I mean, we're talking about COVID, so if someone looks back a year from now or whatever, I mean, we're in the midst of the COVID pandemic, and so much of that is the chest, right? And then the George Floyd, the throat, I can't breathe, right? And the racial tensions and everything. That's where the energy is being moved from the heart, and people speaking out. Like, all this junk has to come out, and it's not pretty. And when we rise, when we ascend, it sounds so lovely on some level, like, oh, we're all ascending and we're all awakening, and isn't it peaceful and lovely? Well, I think it's not so much. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had anything fall asleep, RoseAnn, but when it starts to wake up, it hurts, it tingles, it doesn't feel good. Or a faucet that hasn't been turned on for a while, you get it pumping, and then you turn it on and the water comes out and it's all coppery and dirty looking, right?
Yeah.
And things are messy and they have to get cleared out. And while it's from a big picture, it's going to be a great thing that is happening, while we're in it, it just can bite, right? It's not fun. So we're being invited, so many people are being invited to speak out and speak up, and that energy is just pushing through and rising, because what has to happen is our hearts need to be balanced and in love, so that what we speak comes from that, and then it needs to be here with our inner eye, where we can see things and have faith, even if they aren't right now. That's part of manifesting, and part of the living vision board as well, is harnessing that power that we have to be able to see things in our mind and hold the image of them, even if that's not the case right now, to be able to bring it into fruition.
Yeah. Okay. I did that. Just a new thing popped into my head. Duality. That's holding a dual things, reality and what can be. Being able to hold those two things. Whole new definition of duality.
And there's all kinds of laws, and so far they probably will figure out how to do it. But right now, at this moment, there aren't any laws about what we can think about. There are plenty of laws about how we behave and what's legal, what's illegal. Whether you agree with the laws or not, there are laws governing so many things. But so far, our private life, our inner life, still is under our own jurisdiction. And yet part of the energy of moving through the heart into the voice up to here is for us to have a kinder thought process in the long run, because if one person isn't free, we're not really all free, right? So it's inclusion, equality on how we think about people, and how we think about ourselves, and how we think of ourselves as a community.
Yeah, absolutely. And to take that a little bit further too, because all of our thoughts and what we are putting out in the world is all being fed back into the loop. So like you said, if one of us isn't free, none of us are really free. It's interesting too that, okay, there's many things going on in my head, but that you and I also are becoming much more free in our speaking, and which ties right in. We're on trend. we're on evolution.
Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, please.
But I totally lost my train of thought now. Okay.
We're talking, you've invited me to be uncensored, right? Because I've been always so careful about, being raised as the daughter of a minister. In that particular community, all eyes were on our family and on me, and what I said, and anything I said could reflect, on him. And you have your own reasons, but always be very, very, very careful about what I said. And while that's good on one hand, on the other hand, I just have always been choking on my own words and my own thoughts and conceding to everybody else, like, sure, oh, you can have your opinion, and just being very quiet. But when those energies start to come forth and clean out the heart and open up the throat chakra, sometimes words and ideas and things just start coming out.
Well, I am so grateful for that. I did remember what I wanted to say too, talking about freedom and that our inner is still free. But I'm wondering how long that's going to last, because when you look at the trends and the tech trends, there is the definite trend towards the cyborg kind of thing, right? The human machine, the human robot, right, coming together. And so that could have like really scary consequences. So I'm wondering if you have any ideas of how that fits into our evolution. Some people think that is our evolution.
No. Ah.
Kind of scary.
Well, it is very, very scary. And I am hoping that we can hold on to our autonomous thoughts. I mean, there's, I don't know if this will answer it or not, but I know that I tend to hang out and spend time with people who share similar ideas. And that feels really good, right? I mean, it's just nice to be able to say, oh, I was thinking this the other day and blah, blah, and you or other people go, yeah, okay, that's cool, that's interesting. And there's just that kind of harmony that happens. Because when we're in the presence of people who believe so different, either we tend to keep our mouth shut, or if we say something, there is an invitation for them to have idea clashes, right? And that is happening so much more between men and women and Democratic and Republican and people who believe in God and people who don't. And take any issue, just about take any issue, and there's like gender issues or racial issues, and there's just people so passionate on opposite sides, and they're clashing more than ever. Mm-hmm. But, and I'm going to add the but, I don't like the conflict that happens, and I understand that conflict can be necessary for change. Most everything on this planet that has ever come to change has come through some form of conflict and uprising, but I'm just talking about like on a conversational level, it can be very draining to say something and have other people like, oh, I don't believe that, oh, that's stupid, or la, 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 and then have dogma and politics. That can, to me, be very draining. Mm-hmm. So I am looking for something that's kind of a hybrid, right? You talk about duality and stuff. If I'm only around people who agree with me, right? Yeah. Or if I'm only around people who share my sympathies or my ideas, while that feels good, and we do like challenge each other, we're just sort of course, we're just always enjoying our own type of conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And then the opposite is combative, conflicting, if you want to be around people who just have such diametrically opposed views. But I'm looking for a kind of round table that has people that have all kinds of views that can talk about their views without the air of violence, without feeling threatened or threatening. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, okay. Would you put that in our evolution through the chakras? Would you put that as moving into the sixth chakra then? Like being able to hold visions and without conflict, right?
It would be great, because I mean, I know if a person feels heated or passionate about something, it is the human tendency to want to defend a position. But you already know what you believe. I already know what I believe. I think that's kind of boring. It's either all like, or petting each other. Like, oh yeah, of course I agree with you. I want to expand the conversation so that I can really hear. I can have my heart balanced over my own power. Like, I don't think power necessarily has to mean dominating, right? That to me isn't power. But if each person has their own confidence and their own personal power, then they are very confident about what they believe, and they can also hear what other people are saying and can also speak their mind.
Mhm.
And that's the kind of community and roundtable, and what I want to have different political viewpoints, different religious viewpoints, different male, female, different gender, share perspective, but not be so isolated that this is the only thing I believe in. No information can come back in. And I had a refreshing conversation with my very conservative cousin that we were just talking, and he said, wow, I never thought of it that way. And I was like, yes, it was just a conversation. He went away probably with all his beliefs intact, and I went away with mine, but it was just that cool ability to hear each other and to not get defensive.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm inviting people to do. Like, we have to, we're still here as a culture. We're still like in the heart mess and in the opening of the throat chakra, but the throat chakra includes the ears and the eyes. This is all about communicating, right? So if there's nothing to defend, could we hear each other?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yes. That brings to mind too, I had met a Native Canadian woman, and she had talked about a circle that they do to bring this very thing out, so that everybody is situated around a circle, looking at the same thing, describing it, and every single person has a different perspective, and it makes everybody aware that it's from where they're looking, that's their perspective, and there's a whole range of other possibilities and viewpoints, and change that into a sphere, and
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, why would you not want to hear all these possibilities and eye-opening things, and yeah, talk about the whole area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being able to hear and see and hold different visions, and to see the possibilities, and how you might be missing something from this comes up a lot, like, and it has always in charity work, where you're trying to help other underprivileged, who we would say were underprivileged people, but we're helping them from our perspective, not from theirs, and it often doesn't work. So having these conversations and bringing everybody together to the table, to the round table.
The round table. There's no head in a round table.
That's right. Yeah.
And I know that I don't have all the information. Like, each day, like in my evolutionary journey, I learned something new, and I put that, like, oh, I didn't know that before, and that's interesting. Oh, I didn't hear all that. Like, I was operating on this idea, but I didn't realize that piece had been left out, right?
Yeah.
And I want to be able to have really juicy, interesting conversations with people that are like me and that are not like me, right? And I was having a conversation about God, and this woman brought in a different perspective than I'd ever heard before, and I just have to share it here if you don't mind.
Yeah.
She said, what if God were like the weather and the different continents? So someone in upper, like where it's super cold, like even colder than where you are in Canada, like maybe Denmark and Norway and stuff, who has very little light during the winter and stuff, maybe their description of God would be it's cold and dark, right? Because that would be their experience. And someone south of the equator would be, are you kidding? God is hot and red and fiery, right? And both would be true because of what they're experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. We're going in a lot of places here. This is really cool. I have often I've taken note, and again, just today, of how Christianity over the centuries has in the effort to, well, this is my words, but my interpretation of being able to include people, bring them into Christianity, they have included Native people's traditions and changed it into Christian form so that it would be acceptable to them to bring them in. And I have noticed that over and over and over again. And I find it interesting that sort of, it's inclusion and exclusion at the same time. It's like, your thing is wrong, but we're going to include it in here in our interpretation, and so that you'll get the real thing, right? The right thing. Yeah, I think we have some growing up to do.
Well, I don't know if we want to take the conversation there, because I have a whole feeling about that. So that could be a whole other conversation, or.
Well, yeah, part of me just wants to go for it. Yeah.
Well, I feel that if we want to go back to the history, I mean, not just the history of how Christianity has been used, but I mean to the very beginning when Jesus roamed the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I could go back in time, Jesus and his disciples sat in Mediterranean rooftop gardens and broke bread together. Mm-hmm. And they fed and nurtured, and they had, you know, the rugs, and they were lounging how they sit around. And can you imagine, at the end of the day, they got together when they were so filled with the Holy Spirit, they were so filled with the gift of healing and love and being able to speak in tongues and understand all the different languages that were around them. And they were able to go out as individuals or pairs, and they actually performed miracles and healed people. Mm-hmm. And to be able to meet in the evenings after a very hot, dusty day, have your feet washed, have a beautiful glass of wine, some delicious food, and to be able to come back to your inner group and discuss the new miraculous powers that you were discovering in your own journey, and all the different people you were able to help and impact and improve the lives genuinely. Like, mm-hmm. That to me is the juiciest thing I can think of. And now, how they have created the Lord's Supper or communion into these little teeny tiny prefabricated little tiny white loaf, I mean, not even a loaf, it's a little piece.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have like a little tiny sip out of a doll's cup, right? That is supposed to be symbolic, but how can it feed you even on the physical, much less the spiritual, when we're so cut off, right? I mean, there was food in the evenings. There was pure food and conversation and being able to make such an impact. And I think our version right now is so watered down.
Yeah.
That we're not connecting to the divine and doing what Jesus said that we would, that we could do what he did and more. Mm-hmm. And I don't see with my own eyes, and I would love to have my eyes open and my ears opened. If people are absolutely performing miracles and doing that, I want to know about it. So if you guys watching know about this, let me know. Otherwise, I don't think we are connecting with the original intent.
I think there are people who are, and I am meeting some of them, and I wouldn't discount yourself in that either. But I want to really point out something here, because in modern spirituality, there's kind of like this two thing going on. There's this manifesting abundance. Everything is abundant. I should have money. I should have houses. I should have cars. And then there's this, it's not messy. It should be easy. It should be fluid. I shouldn't have to actually work. But, you know, when you talk about like the reality, like you did, how many people think of the disciples, Jesus and the disciples sitting and living in that fullness of the moment and the fullness of themselves and the abilities that we as humans have. And there was also the messiness of everything. Like, it wasn't easy for them. Like, they got chased. They were, you know, chased from town to town. People didn't believe them. To think that life is going to be so easy and pretty all the time is an illusion. I think the journey is going to take effort. It's going to require us to do things and to be on the edge, but then to come together, you know, as that group and live in that fullness of what's available to us and to share and be together. And I think the whole thing really works together as a beautiful synchronous life.
Well, you touch on points that are kind of like let's pull that thread. Let's look at that, right? I mean, this gets into the area of money and abundance, and if life is difficult, is not difficult. I mean, I don't know if you want to take the conversation there or you want to bring it back around, because we're just kind of on a.
Well, it's really interesting because sometimes life is difficult and sometimes it's so easy, it's unbelievable. Like, it's like, how did that become so easy? Like, why didn't I see that? Or, well, how did I make that so difficult when it was really so easy? And so I'm wondering now, would you say that now that we're moving through the higher chakras, would we become easier if we're sitting together in a round table and sharing our perspectives? Would that really make things easier for humanity as a whole?
Well, I think each person, when we're taking it back to what is pleasurable for them, or what, you know, they're in charge of their own inner life. Like, I'm painting a picture of what I want. Like, my desire is like a round table. People have different perspectives, right? But at the same time, I'm also saying I want to be so connected to the divine that that miraculous power is coming through me, and that I'm able, along with some other people, to be able to perform miracles, right? And gather at the end of the day, feasting on whatever. It could be a juicy watermelon or something, but to feed the body and feed the soul at the same time.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So I think, I mean, there's someone in my own life, a relative, who this person and I used to get into, not arguments, but conversations from our own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
She was very, very married to horrible, tragic endings.
Mm.
The movies she loved all were tragic endings. The books she read all had tragic heroines in them. And I was like, but I love happy endings. You know, I would watch some of the movies she recommended. I would get so upset, and I'm like, they just died, or they all killed themselves, or, you know, it was like, this is horrible. I was like, why would I spend my time watching that? And we really, I mean, Eddie, I'm talking about like in 20s, you know, I realized I'm a comedy, or if my life was on a book, or a book or a movie, I would want to be on the comedy shelf, because a comedy ends with a happy ending, right? Mm-hmm. And a tragedy could also have funny, but it ends poorly, right? Mm-hmm. And she has stumped for tragedy, and I have stumped for comedy, and her life is playing out exactly that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was effort. Like, she has cultivated that, mm-hmm. on purpose. Mm-hmm. And that's what brings her the kind of pain that brings her pleasure, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So that's just like a one little microcosm example. So I think people can ignore the lessons when they come. I think the lessons at first come through a whisper.
Mhm.
It comes through a little feather tickle, right? It comes through a little tap on the shoulder.
Mhm.
And if we ignore them, the first one comes around, it would be like right at our level, it'd be easier. The second one, if we miss it, we're behind a little bit. The third one, ooh, we're gonna have to really play catch up. Or if we just want to wait for the cosmic 2x4, we can really bring some interesting drama into our lives, right? And that's not with everybody, and that's not with every situation, but I think that also has its own evolution, right? I
Mhm.
think we can learn lessons through pain, but pain is a signal to grow and not suffer. All right, that is really, if we're experiencing pain, we need to see the bigger picture behind it, because I say pain is relative to the opening and the size of something going through it, right? So like, what's the kind of stone you can pass? Men
Oh,
often,
kidney stones?
is it kidney stone? Are those the ones that they pass?
Yeah.
Okay. When they come out, they're itty bitty, right? They're like all that pain but it's because the opening is that much tinier. So it
Mhm.
seems like a boulder coming through, right? And a newborn baby, you hold it in your arms, it's just, what, 8 pounds? Okay. But that 8-pound cannonball coming through the very narrow opening of a woman, it rips her apart, right?
Mhm.
So pain is relative to what's going through it. So when we are confronted with a painful situation, chances are we have contracted, right? That's what you get into your beta brain, and we contract, which makes that lesson rip us a new one. What can happen is when we go, ooh, pain, that's a signal to grow and not suffer. Suffer is when it stays the same. If we expand and go to a higher viewpoint, sometimes that really allows us to see that lesson and go, oh, that's why that's happening, and increase our opening to let that painful thing go through.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Okay, so I just had another vision while you were talking about that, like moving, like we contract. So I'm going on the triangles again, contracting and then expanding our awareness, right?
Mhm.
And will make things less painful and help us to get our lessons quicker, like without waiting for the cosmic 2x4, which I love that analogy. I wanted to bring up too that Ken Wilber, the philosopher, he's also talking about humans moving, and now I don't remember exactly the words, but humans are moving into a higher level of consciousness and being more cosmocentric, I think he calls it.
Ooh, that's an interesting word.
Yeah, yeah. And I really like that. And I think that fits exactly with what you're talking about, right? Moving to the seventh chakra and the cosmos, right? The whole, the source, and being connected.
And what you're saying, like, I mean, we could have just another conversation on purely manifesting and what is greedy and what is not, and what's too much and what's not enough. I mean, that could be a whole separate topic, right? But when you're talking about life being messy or difficult or having so much pain, I'm seeing so many people right now, because it is COVID, people who have done, now this is only a sampling, right? So I'm not intending on stepping any toes, but I have just seen person after person who's done a lot of their work, the inner work, right?
Yes.
They're the ones that I'm hearing, oh, I've got money in the bank. My husband and I are, loving spending this time together, and I'm exploring creatively. And I mean, I'm just hearing like all these things that people are accomplishing, whether it's like cleaning and organizing their house or learning a new skill set or whatever. I'm hearing plenty of beautiful experiences that people are having in this time, a lot of introspection, and I'm also hearing this is like people's worst nightmare, right? Couples who have avoided each other, lived separate lives, have managed to throw themselves into work or whatever, are being forced to be with each other. And it's like across the globe, people are having an opportunity to really check in which chakra has the most support and which chakra needs the most support. So for some people, it's the financial, it's the survival. Like that's the chakra that needs it. Other people, their heart, their heart is being broken or their heart is healing. Other people are learning to speak out. There's a lot of masking that's happening as well. At the same time that this is coming out, we're having to wear masks, and it was just now suggested that we might have to wear goggles, and like it's covering up the very thing. I think that's fascinating. And some people, their intuition and their inner faith is really being called to activate, right? So as we're going through these different chakras through up to the conceptual age, not everybody is at the same level at all. Like some people are still hunting and gathering on the planet, like literally or figuratively. Some people are still agricultural, and we get that food because of that, right? And there's people who are in this age of enlightenment in new forms of scientific discovery and music and art, right? That's where some people are. And other people are discovering new industry, right? I mean, it's like, it isn't just the one time, it's where other people are now, like because we have all 7 available. So there's different cultures who are in it. There's individuals, there's families, does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. But it strikes me that, like people, say people who are in the agricultural, the second chakra, that we have an opportunity here to move really fast through the chakras so that we all come up together. More so, like, because there's always been that separation, right? There's been like Jesus, and then there's been the disciples, and then there's been the masses of, I don't want to say illiterate, but unknowing, right? But within that, there's been all these other cultures who actually were already there, and then they got knocked back, and then having to go forward again. And so it's interesting hearing you talk about, how people are at different places, right? And moving up. Yeah.
And I've rarely met anybody, you might be the exception, but I've rarely met anybody who has complete mastery over all things, so even in my own self, I might be really easily able to grasp this concept, but then maybe over here, I'm still having like a little hard time on a technical issue or something, other people it's just easy. But I'm like, what? So even in our own individual development, like some people may be absolutely kinesthetic and, ballet dancer with developed muscles, but then they might be emotionally shut down, or somebody could be super cerebral, but not really spend much time in their heart. So even in our own development, I wouldn't say that all of our own chakras are 100% open, healed, balanced, whatnot.
Yeah, exactly, precisely. And I have done a tremendous amount of work on all that for myself and for my clients, of course, too. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
And you can look at this journey any way you want. Like hunting and gathering can be literal, like we have to hunt and gather for our food. Or it can be when people go shopping. They spend a lot of time in that first chakra hunting and gathering, purses and belts and handbags or cars or, or it could be hunting and gathering partners. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to interpret this. The agricultural age can be growing children. It can be growing a business, you know, planting the seeds and looking for the harvest. The age of enlightenment can be through the various arts, but it's also like, you know, the age of enlightenment and awakening, right? Our power center. So
Okay. So what you're saying is that we're going through the process in everything that we do,
yes,
and in greater and greater ways, and as a humanity as a whole. And I'm loving this, because this is exactly the way unified physics is, right? There's the subplonk, the Planck, there's wormholes, there's black holes, and I actually see them at different scales, that it builds on each other in harmonic resonance, right? Everything goes from one level to another level, or the same thing in greater and greater and greater at different scales. And so we're evolving in all ways, at all times, at all levels.
exactly. I mean, you could take this, I mean, you could keep taking this, and it's like a microcosm of the macrocosm, and the hologram.
Yeah.
Okay, so it could be in musical scale, 7 scales. Like you could start out at, you know, hunting and gathering, agriculture, you know, like up the scales, right? And that's also like our own emotions. We could have our whole, not just our chakras, but our whole emotions can go through this same evolutionary process. Like one emotion, it can take, okay, here's something I learned that's new, which I said earlier. I didn't know, if I don't know something and then I can bring it into my own awareness and then I adapt that. I did not know that when we have an explosion of chemicals from a reaction, like somebody cuts us off on the road and we go, ah, we get mad, or somebody says something to us that hurts our feelings. It only takes 90 seconds for the chemicals to flood our body and completely be expunged. I did not know that. I thought, uh-oh, once those chemicals are released, it's going to take me 10 minutes, 10 hours, whatever, to release them. Our body does it that quickly. So it can go through all 7 stages in 90 seconds, right? So we can have an evolutionary cycle around an emotion, around a thought, around an idea, and it can last for seconds, or we can build it if we like it. If we like it, we can keep nurturing it and shaping it until it becomes real.
Wow. Okay. I want to bring that full circle now back to the Living Vision Board, because this is a fascinating conversation, and we have to do this more and more, because there are so many directions we could go in here. But in the Living Vision Board, are you finding that they also show where people are in their chakra development by what they're choosing to put in the Living Vision Board?
Absolutely. You know, I will find it. I am all about self-expression, whether it's my self-expression and just between me and the canvas, right? No one else has to see it. Like I just painted a picture this last weekend, and it was really fascinating to see what came out. And so that was me expressing my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions. But also I love it when other people express. So if I go shopping, let's say before COVID, when I could do that, I'd be really curious that day what colors I was drawn to, because then I would look at the pile I was going to try on, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Today it's all brown and beige. That's unusual, right? Why am I being drawn to that? And another day it might be purple and orange. So I noticed that I would express, I would actually get a reflection back, I guess I would say, of what was in me through the colors I chose or through paints, right? So when people are practicing the Living Vision Board, I can speak for myself. I'll be looking through images and words, and when I'm done, I'll find that so many of the words that day all had to do with heart and love, right? Like anything to do, I'll be like, oh, that's a lot of 4th chakra stuff, right? Or green. If I cut out a lot of green and pink, I'm like, oh, that's heart chakra. If I'm really drawn to reds and words that have to do with family, whatever, I'm like, oh, I'm I'm expressing or calling in family dream, you know, the dreams and ideas of like where I want something to happen in the family. So it's really fascinating to be able to, because you're creating your own narrative, right? With it's the left brain again, times, dates, money, tangibles, and right brain images, like that the connection to all their that is speaks image pictures. So we need the pictures and the words together.
Okay, I just got something too. I have never thought of this in terms of vision boards before, but like you talked about reflections and that left and right brain, so that what your right brain might be telling you that you need to work on here, this is something you need to look on. And so your left brain is going to say, okay, you want to look at this, you know, like this piece of clothing or this whatever, put that on your vision board. But it's not the actual thing necessarily. It's that is going to trigger the learning that you need, or the insight that you need in that chakra or that area.
Yes.
Thank you.
So it looks like we're going to have more conversations about all kinds of stuff.
I absolutely think so. Okay, so and now tell people how they can get a hold of you and where they can learn more about the Living Vision Board.
Well, right now, my invitation is for people to join the Living Vision Board Facebook community. And it is just starting. And hopefully when people are watching this, it'll get a little bit further. But we have the link. We already copied and pasted it in the chat, so you have it there.
Yeah, I will put it below the video. Okay. So everybody, you can check it out on Facebook. It's the Facebook/group /Living Vision Board, and that link will be below.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Cindia. I love talking to you. I love going all these different places to you. You know, these are the kind of conversations that I loved having since I was a teenager. And it seems like in my life that in each stage of my life, there has been one person who has come along who could talk with me like this about all kinds of things in the world. And we didn't have to agree. We don't have to anything. We just get to explore all these ideas and these concepts and just let our brain go all different places and see what develops. And I love that. And I thank you so much for that, Cindia. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. So the Living Vision Board link will be below. And I don't think I even introduced myself. I'm RoseAnn Janzen. My website is revealyourlife.com. I am the editor-in-chief of the Conscious Evolution Journal and the creator of the Expanding Consciousness game. And I will put those links below too. So please, you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and listen for more of these insightful and interesting conversations. Goodbye, everybody.